want to start?
I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commission of July 24th, 2024. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action on all today's items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held July 10th, 2024.
Move to approve, Campbell.
Second, Edens?
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Ebert?
Yes.
Edens?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. The item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted on in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Yes, item 1.1, street and alley vacation 24008, to vacate an unused portion of the alley on the north side of Dakota Circle adjacent to lots 9 through 10, Block 2, Clearview Addition, and Outlot A, Chapin Terrace replat on property generally located on east of South 16th Street and north of Dakota Circle. Item 1.2, text amendment 24009, to amend Lincoln Municipal Code, Chapter 27.72.120, and clarify the wording of allowable floor area for accessory buildings. Item 1.3, text amendment 24010, to amend the Lincoln Municipal Code, Section 27.06.020, use groups, B, more than one main use, 2, to allow more than 2 single-family dwellings on the same lot in commercial and industrial zoning districts. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
Yes.
1.3 text amendment 24010. Hope Village comes to the Clinton Neighborhood Organization meeting every month and gives us an update on progress. So this was said they were waiting for this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
No.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
We do not see anyone here that would like to speak on the consent agenda items. We would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, Edens?
Shelley?
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Ebert?
Yes.
Edens?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
There are no requests for deferral, so we will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person would state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and or included as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will then use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes have expired. Once the final minute has elapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Item 4.1, text amendment 24007, an ordinance,
Go ahead.
an ordinance amending sections 27.62 and 27.63 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages for consumption on and off the premises as a conditional rather than special permitted use. The ordinance would further amend sections 27.62 and 27.63 to clarify the conditions where sale of alcoholic beverages on or off the premises are permitted for residential, healthcare, and outdoor recreation facilities. Are there any expected communications to be disclosed on this application?
Yes.
4.1, on the text amendment, Brian and David presented at the Mayor's Roundtable on this text amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Shelley?
Are there any expected communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No. Okay.
I'm going to take a point of privilege at the moment.
Excellent.
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Brian didn't know I was going to do this, but I do want to let you all know as planning commissioners that this will be Brian's final public hearing with the Planning Commission. He has served us in an extraordinary ways over the last 23 years.
Yeah.
He will be retiring at the end of the month, and it is very appropriate that his final hearing and final presentation is on the alcohol topic. Having been our point person on all the regulations for alcohol over the years. Just want to let you know that this is his final hearing. I want to thank you publicly, Brian, for all your service. And thank you for all the work in the alcohol realm as well. So with that, thank you, and I just want to let you know that this was his last meeting.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. Brian Will, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street, Lincoln 68502. Yes, I didn't know David was going to do that, but I appreciate those words. Thank you. So the application before the Planning Commission today, this text amendment, in description is pretty simple. We're proposing to make the special permits for the sale of alcohol conditional uses. And I think the rationale is self-explanatory almost. But maybe before I get into that, let me just talk a little bit about the history, kind of set the context here. So special permits for both the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises and off the premises. So there's two special permits. They were originally adopted in 1994, and there was kind of a consortium of interests that emerged at that time and brought that amendment forward. It was eventually approved by the City Council, and so since then we've been operating under the zoning ordinance with special permits on and off sale. So anybody coming in new today in a district where it's allowed, and essentially that's the B, the H, and the I zoning, our commercial zoning districts, need a special permit. Let me just note, there were a whole bunch of uses out there that were already legally existing, and so there are conflicts out there with the existing regulations, but that's why they pre-existed the adoption in 94. So those regulations were in place and operating fairly smoothly for about 10 years. In 2004 came the first major change, and that major change was twofold. It allowed those two special permits to then become final action items at the Planning Commission. So Planning Commission gained the authority for final approval. It also eliminated the variability of the 100-foot separation. So up until that point, from 94 to 2004, an applicant could bring in an application, request that that otherwise required 100-foot separation be reduced to any number, essentially, providing mitigation in the form of landscaping, screening, something deemed adequate by both the planning director and then accepted by the city council. So there were a few special permits that were approved between 94 and 2004 with less than 100 feet, but it was because of that provision. Well, I think that got to be untenable for a lot of reasons. Equity, I think, was certainly one of the talking points. And so in 2004, it became final action of the Planning Commission, but that ability to vary that 100-foot separation was gone. Yeah, so now applicants come in, you either meet the requirements and you can apply for a special permit, or you don't meet them and you're ineligible to apply for a special permit and ineligible to sell alcohol in compliance with local regulations at that location that doesn't meet the requirements. And so if you look at then the ordinance, both of those special permits in the ordinance, there's in relative comparison to other special permits, there's a fairly long list of conditions, okay, and conditions, okay. It in effect is operated as a conditional use in that if you didn't meet all those requirements, if you didn't meet that 100-foot separation to any of those sensitive uses, you couldn't apply. And really, that's how conditional uses function today. If you're proposing a conditional use in a given district and you don't meet all the conditions, you can't go there. Okay, so the rationale in my mind is pretty simple. It's been operating that way for a long time, since 2004 anyway. By the way, over 120 special permits have been approved in that time frame. None have been denied. None have really even been questioned. They've been all straightforward, and virtually all of them have been on the Planning Commission's consent agenda. And so the presumption has always been you meet all the conditions, approval is very likely. So that's part of it. It just from the standpoint of the zoning ordinance, it just makes a lot of sense. It's been functioning as a conditional use. We just well make it one. The other part of it is the relief to applicants in this whole process applying for a liquor license special. So maybe just quickly, two things you need to sell alcohol, right? I know I've said this, I say this all the time. You need a liquor license from the state, and of course everybody knows that. But you also need a special permit under the ordinance where it's allowed. Nobody knows that, almost. And so applicants will apply for their liquor license. That liquor license will be sent down to the city council for city council review. Okay, review and recommendation. City council makes recommendation back through the clerk to the state. That process has to be done in 45 days. Some of those license applications, we review them internally and find, yeah, it meets the requirements, but they need a special permit. Okay, there's not enough time within that 45-day window for an applicant to be notified, turn back around, get an application submitted to planning, and get that approved before the state has to take action. So there's this built-in dilemma. Okay, do we recommend denial, conditional, then approval? Just how do we handle that? I'm just telling you, it has caused confusion between the city staff and the state relative to licensing. Okay, making these conditional uses eliminates that. When the license hits the city clerk, that'll be reviewed by staff within a matter of days, and we'll make a determination. Yes, it complies with the conditions, thumbs up, recommend approval, at least relative to zoning, on the license, or nope, doesn't meet the conditions, thumbs down. The recommendation relative to zoning compliance should be for denial. There's no waiting afterwards. There's no, hoping somebody comes back and applies for their special permit. It is actually much cleaner. Saves the applicant the time and trouble of applying for a special permit, preparing a site plan, submitting to the planning department the application fee of over $1,100. Okay, for something that we pretty much know is going to be approved. It functions as a conditional use. So that really is the background of the rationale for doing this. As was noted by Commissioner Edens, I took this, the planning director and myself took this to the neighborhood roundtable on July 8th and presented it to that group. And I mean, there were a few questions, but I did not detect any opposition to this amendment. And so with that, of course, the planning department is recommending approval. We are the applicant in this case. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dick?
Brian, if we were to carry this over, does that mean you can't retire? No, Commissioner Campbell, it only makes me wish that we had done this 20 years ago.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that was a great question.
Awesome.
So, Brian, will that eliminate the $1,100 you mentioned?
Correct.
Fee too?
Yes, these conditional, a review for a conditional use at either the time of the building permit or as a part of the license review, there's no fee. We do that automatically. That's part of either the building permit process or part of the internal license review. So there is no fee, there is no application. Conditional uses, you do not have to make application for that.
And how would this affect, say, people applying the Hub and Soul music series? I know has had some issues. At one point, there was a rain date, but that was not part of the application, so there was no rain date effective. So for fundraising and city events and that type of thing, how does that affect them?
Yeah, this isn't going to affect, this isn't going to have any effect on something like that. Now, by the way, there are several districts where, well, there's one district where the sale of alcohol is already permitted use, and that's the B4 district downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's conditional already in a couple other districts. But here again, in this case, on the license, the review of the license application or the building permit, the determination is going to be made almost instantly. It's either, yep, meets requirements, or nope, sorry. There's no delay in finding out the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we've heard the testimony also from the applicant. Any testimony in support? Any testimony in neutral position? Any testimony in opposition? Any other questions? Yes.
Procedural question.
Yes, perhaps before the.
Yes.
I forgot to hand this out. So in my staff report, the page number 4, for whatever reason, it doesn't show up on the online version. I mean, it's only a couple of paragraphs. It's just it's essentially just the summary, the conclusion.
Thank you.
But nonetheless, I wanted to make sure that planning commission has it.
So this is your applicant rebuttal.
My rebuttal and apology.
You need a copy?
Yeah, so
You go.
Brian, are there other commercial areas like Village Gardens where, when we wrote the city standards, that included alcohol as a permitted use throughout?
Yeah, so in the case of Village Gardens, 56th and Pine Lake Road, that's a planned unit development, and as part of that planned unit development, we have the ability to vary the underlying zoning regulations, and we've done that in virtually all of them that have been approved in recent history. So yes, Village Gardens is one. So yes, we have done that in several examples. We've done it in a few of the cases where beyond a planned unit development, such as a use permit or special permit for planned service commercial. So it's pretty much customary anymore these days, a development working its way through the process, if we know there's going to be commercial uses there and that they're likely going to have alcohol, we will look at including some sort of an adjustments up front in the review process. So that's typical, common.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your many years of service.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Planning Commission. Go ahead.
This may be a David question. So I know this is city. I have potential conflict from a county perspective. So should I recuse myself for this, or we're good because I'm outside the bounds of this?
A Tim question. You've got the big guns.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, Tim's the Assistant City Attorney. I don't see any conflict with anything done out in the county. This would just apply within the city limits and then in the 3 mile extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Okay,
Thanks.
perfect. Thank you for asking that question. Any other questions before we allow Brian to celebrate his moment?
Yeah, so well, I just want to say thanks to the Planning Commission, to the members here today and those that preceded you. I think City of Lincoln has been well-served and continues to be well-served by its selfless members that will sign up to do this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything.
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Edens?
Ball?
Whoop, 2 seconds here.
Oh.
Entertain a motion for the approval of the text amendment.
You have to close the public hearing.
Oh, so sorry. Gosh, I was so ready for this. Practice, David. Shelley?
All right, Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Ebert.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Public hearing is closed.
Now, I would move that we approve text amendment 24007.
Second, Edens?
Thank you. Any commissioner discussion?
I did sit in on the mayor's roundtable and their presentation, and even as we were leaving, nobody took issue at all with this, and there was a fair number of neighborhoods represented. It's
And-
always good to see.
And I will say that through Brian Will, the planning department has been very helpful when you've brought forth things. For example, with Village Gardens, we've got people living in the commercial district. Well, that would prohibit you from having a liquor license because they're not 100 foot away. But by us writing in that alcohol was a permitted use anywhere in that commercial, then that allowed living as well as retail and office and the alcohol being part of the location. So he's been very good and very helpful in moving things forward over the years. And I'm sorry to see him go.
I think procedurally, to help speed that up is a win,
Mhm.
especially given the federal, state, and city things that need to be done to allow that licensing. So that's a definitely big positive, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate planning, recognizing confusion and frustration probably from public and business owners and doing something to correct it. So, thank you.
Okay. I agree with my fellow commissioners. And Brian, we really have enjoyed you. You've made it very nice for us as planning commissioners and made our job a lot easier because it is a confusing, sometimes liquor license and all of those things can be a challenge. So thank you for all your efforts. Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Ebert.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
And I move that we adjourn the planning commission hearing.
Second, Edens.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
We are adjourned.